Joe.
Blacula.
Mugabe in Lancaster House with his comrades arguing over the land question. When he accepted in that Constitution that for 10 years we would ask them to give up the land and we would buy it back. Hell, that's a hell of a compromise. That somebody stole your land and then wants you to buy back what they stole. That compromise from the beginning is what put you in the trouble that you're in today. Because when you're at war with your enemy, you got to take your enemy out so that your land is yours from day one. If we did that 20 years ago, we would not have to do this today. It is better to be a terrorist over your house than to be a good man in the eyes of your enemy and not in control of your own house. It's a damn shame to me that you say you're the owners of the land and this man can't sell a house in a white neighborhood? How in the hell are you free? And why would you accept this as your reality?
Preach it. Come on, bro.
Hell yes, I got to preach it, man. We have bowed down to them, and every time you bow down to them, they crush you even more. So when you stand up, now you become an enemy. That shows you that they are your enemy. Excuse me for being passionate. You know, I'm just passionate because I love you. I love this land. And I hate to see what the enemy has done and what he continues to do. And as long as the president allowed them to stay here, I mean, think about this. Ian Smith, when you look at all those bodies, those skulls, and those graves, when you win, you don't even bring your chief enemy to justice. You don't try him. You don't kill him. You allow him to live here and own land. See, that's the goodness of your heart because you don't know your enemy and you really don't know yourself. But if you knew yourself and you knew your enemy, you would deal with your enemy like an enemy. And I have to say this to you, Reverend. See, there ain't gonna be nobody like you or me dealing with this today because your heart's too tender. God has to deal with this today. And that's why the Bible say blood will be up to the horse's bridle. You can't stop that with no nonviolence. I'm sorry, I have to tell you the truth because when I leave here, you're going to meet it anyway. God is going to deal with this. And if the white man don't back up, you're going to be right back to war again. And a curtain of blood is going to rise from South Africa all the way to the north because the white man is not going to give up without a fight. And you know I'm telling you the truth. If in this state, if we could inspire our young people to become educated but not trained. Educated. Science, mathematics, physics, chemistry, all branches of engineering, technology. Within the next 20 years, you will have this country in your hands. I believe that's what he was thinking about. The young firebrands want it now, but if you want to take it now, you can only take it through military strategy and violence. And if you go up into that, then the world community backs away from you. And you destroy what you have helped white folk to build that's going to come to you anyway. It will come. The question is, you waited 400 years. Can you plan now and prepare strategically to take it before he leaves this earth? He wants to see it. And I know you got 20 more years. If you look after yourself right, we may be able to do it in 15 with a man like this. Brother, you got the right spirit. And when you went to America and you met with the black business people, and nothing has come from it, not a thing, because in reality, brother, that black businessman over there is suffering. And if you look at his bottom line, he ain't doing too well. Because the white boys over there have done the same thing. Our biggest business used to be Johnson, Johnson Publishing, the Ebony Jet Magazine, whatnot. And one of my helpers, who is our chief of protocol, she used to be a model for Mr. Johnson. And now she's with me. She went to Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson said, I wish I were as free as Farrakhan. Farrakhan don't have the money that Johnson has, but he's not free, because the moment he gives a big story on Farrakhan, they pull their ads. Then his magazine collapses. That's how they gain control of black newspapers. When you get the newspaper, they want to put the big ad in. You take the big ad, you get used to the money, and then you say something in your editorial policy they don't like, they yank their ad and they collapse your newspaper. So they're not free. We used to have Johnson Products. Johnson Products produce hair care. We started a hair care company. We went to Johnson because Muammar Gaddafi loaned us $5 million to get it started. We went to our black brother and said, brother, we want you, we'll make the formula, and you start making the product for us. And we put the $5 million in a black bank. And as God is my witness, the chairman of the board and the president of the bank came to my office and begged me to take the money out. And Mr. Johnson called me on the telephone and said, Farrakhan, I can't make your product because the Jews threatened me that if I made a product for you, they would pull my product off of all the shelves and they would not distribute me. So they forced us to start our own factory. You see? So the giants that you look to in America, they are midgets. And the white boy will tell them in a minute, midget, we will crush you if you get out of line. So they're bigger slaves.
lañ téere yooyu digle dafa safaanoo ak jëf yu ñuy jëf loolu moo tax mu wax ne ñoom ay saytaane la.
Selling human beings.
mu ne jàpp doomu aadama di ko jaay.
Kidnapping human beings.
dem fekk ay nit ci seen kër jàpp leen def leen njaam.
Murdering human beings.
di rey ay doomu aadama.
without a just cause
te amuloo dara loo xamante ne moo waral nga jëf-jëf ju ñaaw jooju
is not the work of God.
mu ne loolu du jëfi yàlla
It is the work of Shaitan.
jëfi seytaane la
Deceiving human beings
mu ne di nax doomu aadama yi di leen war waxtu wu nekk
and making them to believe that heaven for them is in the sky,
di leen gëmloo ne aljana pour ñoom mu ngi ci kaw asamaan
while they work us night and day to build a heaven for them on the earth.
gannaaw boo xamante ne nag ñu ngi leen jël doomu aadama yooyu ñu gëmloo ne leen seen aljanaa ci kaw di leen liggéeyloo guddi ak bëccëg pour ñu tabaxal leen ñoom tubaab yooyu aljana fii ci kaw suuf
This is not the work of God.
mu ne loolu du liggéey yàlla du jëfi yàlla
This is the work of Shaitan.
jëfi seytaane la
To come to Senegal, to come to Gambia, to come to Ghana, to come to Cameroon, to Gold Coast, to Gabon, to South Africa, to cover Africa, and use our sweat and our blood to build every capital in Europe while you suffer in the mud and in the dust. That is not the work of God.
mu ne ñëw ci réew yooyu mu lim yépp jël doomu aadama yi fi nekk muucu seen deret naan seen ñaq pour jël liñ liggéey ci alal yépp dem tabaxee ko kër ya nga xam ne ak dëkkuwaay ya nga xam ne mooñ lañ tabax ci Europe mu ne bàyyi ñooñu ñuy torox di dundee botoxo ak poussière mu ne loolu jëfi seytaane la
So, if we do not want to be called the children of Shaitan, the children of Satan, the children of the devil, then we must not do the works of Satan.
mu ne nag waxtu woo xamante ne bañ nañ ne buñ ñu wooyee doomi seytaane wala doomi jinne kon waruñ jëf-jëfi seytaane wala jëfi jinne
This is not about hating white people.
mu ne lii nag jotewut dara ak mbañal goo xam ne daf koo am mu jëm ci nit ku weex
It is about hating evil.
waaye mu ngi jëm ci mbañal gum xam ci lépp lu jublu ci lu bon
It's not about mistreating another human being.
mu ne jotewut ak dara it ci di ñàkkee teggiin beneen xeet bu yàlla bind
But it is about lifting the standard of God that all of us may measure ourselves by that standard.
waaye mu ngi nekk ci taxawal dëgg gi nga xam ne moom la yàlla def ci téere bi nga xam ne ci la ñuy nattee jëfi doomu aadama bu nekk rafetal ko wala ñu ñaawal ko
So because we speak the truth
mu ne kon li am mooy ne ñun ñu ngi wax dëgg
and raise our people from the grave of ignorance,
jëlee suñuy mbooloo ak suñuy nit ci taxawaayu réer
causing our men to throw down the bottle,
fexe
alcohol,
ba suñuy nit sànni butéeli alcool muy butéeli sàngara ba dootuñ ko jëfandikoo
causing them to give up the cigarette
fexe ba dootuñ tux cigarette
or the drugs
wala drogue
or fornication or adultery
wala njaalo
or eating of swine flesh,
wala lekk yàpp mbaam
and causing our women to come out of these scanty garments
wala jëlee suñ jigéen ñi ci sol yëre yu bon yu gàtt yu seere yi ñuy sol
into decent clothing,
jumale leen ci yëre yu jot yoo xamante ne moo dëppoo ak li yàlla wax
so that their former slave masters cannot see their fine hips
mu ne ba nga xamante ne seen ña nga xam ne ñoo leen jàppoon def leen ay buumi njaam dootuñ mën a gis seeni awra
and their beautiful form.
ak jëmm bind yu rafet yi nga xam ne moom la leen yàlla bind
So the enemy says they're hate teachers.
mu ne bu ko defee noonu nag dal di
But you are still covered in the blood of the pollution of your days in slavery. Hear me. You are covered with the life that the slave master put in you, putting the lighter against the darker against the lighter, the rich against the poor against the rich, the educated against the uneducated, Those that have privilege from those that don't have privilege at all. The women against the men against the women. This is the pollution of the blood of our enslavement that we need to be washed from. Jesus told the people, wash and be clean. We have to be cleaned from that pollution. Somebody has to wash us. Somebody has to prepare us for freedom, because our former colonial and slave masters have never prepared us to be truly free from them. So you can walk around in Frederickstead and Christiansted, and you can go from St. Thomas to St. Croix or St. John or the other islands. But what are you going to do? Wherever you go, you carry that state that your mind is in. And so the book says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. What truth? What truth do we need to know? First, we need to know God. And we need to know our direct connection to Him. And we need to know who we are. This is very important. Because if you don't know yourself, you can't love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you won't unite with yourself. And if you don't love yourself, then Christiansted will be different from Frederickstead. And Barbados will be different from Jamaica, and Jamaica will be different from Trinidad, and Trinidad will be different from Martinique and Guadeloupe and all the islands. All of us now divided against ourselves. So the enemy is making the Caribbean their paradise at our expense, because you are not yet free. Somebody blowing the
Mr. Farrakhan, Honorable Farrakhan, you are in Benin, you are in Africa, you are talking about liberation. And I would like to ask you, what you think about the President Ronald Reagan's position vis-a-vis Libya?
Of course, President Reagan is very angry with Muammar Gaddafi and the Libyan Jamahiriya. President Reagan refers to Muammar Gaddafi as a terrorist and says that Muammar Gaddafi is supporting terrorist movements in the world. Our view is that terrorism, like beauty, is in the eyes of the beholder. When the 13 colonies were under the British Crown, George Washington, the first president of the United States, was looked upon by the Crown of England as a terrorist. But from the eyes of those who were yearning to be free, George Washington was a patriot. In my mind, Gaddafi is not a terrorist, but is one who uses the wealth of Libya to support movements for liberation around the world. And so we support Muammar Gaddafi, and we support the liberation struggle in Africa and wherever oppressed people are found on the earth. Finally, we believe that God, Allah, is not on the side of any tyrant or any oppressor, but God has always historically been on the side of the oppressed against the oppressor. And so we welcome the fall of Jean-Claude Duvalier. We welcome the fall of Ferdinand Marcos. We welcome the fall of any puppet of Western imperialism, but we applaud the rise of all those who fight for justice, liberty, and equality for those who suffer under the yoke of tyranny.
And I believe that there is a solution to this problem that can be found that is political and diplomatic. And it does not have to have the resorting to violence. And they tell me, from what I read, that they have bombs that they would drop on Iraq that are so sophisticated that they can go through 12 feet of solid concrete. Well, why would you use a bomb like that? And then say it's against the law to kill another head of state. And respected journalists are standing up on television in the United States calling for the death of Saddam Hussein. Do you think as a Christian nation that this is proper for you? Didn't Jesus teach you that you should do unto others as you would have others do unto you? Australia doesn't want anybody sending warships into this area, threatening her. Why do that to Iraq? America doesn't want anybody making trouble on her borders. Why should she do that to Sudan? Because she says Sudan harbors terrorism. Do you know the history of America's involvement in the destruction of leaders and the overthrow of governments all over this earth? And how dare you call somebody else a terrorist when you are marshaling forces in the Gulf right now to terrorize the people of Iraq? I tell you, either the arrogance of power has so blinded the government of the United States and Britain that they can't see themselves. So it's my duty as a citizen to help America to see herself and to help her to do that which is right, even though her policies are voted on by her elite group. Her policy toward Iraq is not proper, and therefore I would urge your leadership not to send their ships into those waters to threaten the people of Iraq, who have not threatened anything in this great nation. Somebody's tape recorder. I'll take two more questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Farrakhan. You've won a lot of support from Muslims for your stance against Israel and the Zionist lobby in America. What is your perspective on them?
I think the children of Israel have a right to a homeland. Every people on this earth deserve self-determination, sovereignty. My question to Prime Minister Netanyahu, if you want this for yourself, don't you think the Palestinians want this for themselves? And to see Palestinians almost in a concentration camp in their own land.
در حقیقت این نظر خداوند و خواست خداوند تنها با ابراهیم نبوده است و با اسماعیل نیز بوده است.
Beloved Iran,
ایران دوست داشتنی،
you are called of God
خداوند شما را فرا خوانده است
to stand for
که
righteousness.
برای حق بایستید.
You terrify the wicked.
شما پلیدی را به وحشت افکنده اید.
So they are going to do everything in their power to destabilize your regime and to weaken your resolve to remain firm with Allah.
و بنابراین از هیچ کاری جهت تضعیف حکومت شما و تضعیف باورها و بنیاد باورهای شما کوتاهی نخواهند کرد.
Well, Allah says we will be victorious.
خداوند به ما وعده پیروز بودن را داده است.
I believe that.
من بر این باور هستم.
So I don't care anything about the Caucasian Europeans' so-called denial of my human rights.
و لذا من نگرانی نخواهم داشت بر ادعاهایی که ممکن است اروپایی ها و قفقازی ها مبنی بر نقض حقوق بشر من مطرح باشد.
For Europe and America did not create me a human being.
از آنجایی که اروپا و آمریکا من را به عنوان یک انسان خلق نکردند.
I have been given my rights by Allah. Now I must claim those rights.
این حقوق توسط خداوند به ما اعطا شده است و ما باید ادعای این حق را امروز بنماییم.
And once you claim your right as a human being and as a servant of God, Shaitan and his forces will say, no, I will enslave you. Then his struggle begins.
و وقتی که شما می‌خواهید این حقی را که خداوند به شما اعطا کرده است ادعا کنید، یقینا شیطان و نیروهای شیطانی خواهند گفت نه و از اینجاست که مجاهده و مبارزه آغاز می‌شود.
We are small in number, the wicked are many.
ما تعدادمان کم است و نیروهای پلید بسیار.
But my brother said yesterday, Allah and one with Allah is the majority.
و دوست من دیروز به من گفت که یک نفر با خداوند اکثریت است.
You already are the winner.
شما برندگان واقعی هستید.
You are one with Allah, you are the majority.
شما آن یک نفر با خدا هستید که اکثریت را خواهید داشت.
Keep on moving towards your goal.
ادامه بدهید به این حرکت خود به طرف هدف.
And do not worry about what the wicked say they wish to do to you.
و نگران گفته‌های آنچه که پلیدان میگویند که میخواهند با شما بکنند نباشید.
For all the efforts of the wicked will fail.
زیرا که تمامی تلاش‌های پلیدان.
Now, if the Iraqi leadership is pleasing to the people of Iraq, if Cuban leadership is pleasing to the people of Cuba, if Philippine leadership is pleasing to the people of the Philippines, what does America have to say about that? Is that not minding somebody else's business? Is not that interfering in the sovereign affairs of a sovereign state? Why should the President of the United States and those in the administration say that it is their objective to get rid of Saddam Hussein because they say he has weapons of mass destruction? Well, does America have weapons of mass destruction?
Yes, sir, they have.
Has America used her weapons of mass destruction? Then maybe she should be the first to disarm. If in that area of the world Israel has weapons of mass destruction, but no Muslim state is allowed to have weapons of mass destruction, then where's the balance there? Even if Saddam has the capability of making weapons of mass destruction, it's one thing to have them, it's another thing to use them. And if the world community would retaliate against Saddam Hussein, they could wipe Iraq off the map if Saddam Hussein tried to use any weapon of mass destruction on any of his neighbors. That is a red herring, a false predicate for the destruction of Iraq. That is a false predicate. She has weapons of mass destruction. We want to make sure that Saddam Hussein will never threaten her enemies. Well, what have you been doing there for 7 years? If you have been looking for weapons of mass destruction and destroying the ability of Iraq to produce weapons of mass destruction and disallowing such a thing as chlorine into Iraq because of its potential dual usage, lead, so many things that the Iraqi people are being denied because of double usage, meaning that it could be used to create some weapon. I think America's intentions, no matter what Saddam Hussein may say or do, is to make an example of Iraq, to frighten every nation on this earth that if we don't like you, we'll get rid of you, so you better bow down and do what we say. I visited Libya, I visited Sudan, I visited Nigeria, I visited Iran, I visited Iraq, I visited Syria, and all of these are considered terrorists. And so now they want to charge me with treason when I get back home because they say I am cavorting with dictators. Well, if we look now, Nigeria is the most populous black nation on the earth. There is no one who will deny that Nigeria has internal difficulties, internal problems. Nigeria has 250 tribes, speaking 400 different dialects. Democracy for Nigeria can't be democracy American style. Why does America want to force democracy on Ghana, on Nigeria, on Kenya? I mean, why Africa anyway? We didn't ask them to come and give us democracy. Why are they bringing it to us? Why didn't they force it on Saudi? Why didn't they force it on Kuwait? Why, when they brought the ruler back and set him on the throne in Kuwait, why didn't they say, now, we brought you back to power, you must become a democracy? Why didn't they do that? And if they love democracy so much, why is it that in Algeria, when a Muslim popular movement came to power democratically, and that government was annulled, or that election was annulled by the army, why didn't America put sanctions on Algeria? So you see, there's this double standard, and all of it is due to what? Fear of the rise of Islam.
Minister, the question that you've raised of eliminating this mental slavery, which you see as a barrier to the development of people, what can be done? It's for many years we've been speaking about eradicating mental slavery that keeps people from reaching their fulfillment. What can be done? What can you do? What can other leaders of the community, what can our prime ministers do to reach that stage where people understand what needs to be done?
Jesus in the scriptures said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. What truth shall we know that would set us free? We all know some truth, but the fact that we are still dependent says that we may not be knowledgeable of that particular truth of which Jesus spoke that would set us completely free. The greatest knowledge that one could have is the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self, the knowledge of the time in which we live, and the knowledge of what must be done in such a time. And when we know God, know self, know the time, and know what must be done, and act in accord with that knowledge, we are free. And we don't have to blame anyone else for what was done to us in the past. Our destiny now is in our hands when you have that knowledge that will set you free. So that is the blessing, we believe, of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. His message sets us free. His message gives us a knowledge of what must be done in a time like this, so that we will not be looking to others to do for us what we can unite and pool our resources intellectually and financially to do for ourselves. So that's the message that is needed in America among us. It's needed in the Caribbean. It's needed in Africa, because even though we have great leaders, even though we've had wonderful prime ministers do the best they can with what they know and what they have to move the people forward. But the people have a responsibility too. And the prime ministers, no matter how good our leaders are, they can't do it for us. They can open the way for us, but we have to take now charge of our lives and the responsibility that goes with independence, liberation, freedom, and then do what is required of us. But if we're sitting around waiting on a mystery God to drop down out of the sky and do for us what God already gave us, a guide, wisdom, then get up and stop being a beggar at the gate of others, and let's go on and do what we know we can do because we've done it before.
We don't want this person here. White folk can come, black folk can come and preach God, preach Jesus, preach Allah. And Ghana welcomes them. What is the difference with Louis Farrakhan? When I first came here in 1986, disinformation was fed to the intelligence gathering unit of Ghana security. And President Rollins at that time was wise enough and kind enough to say openly and publicly, as I addressed the armed forces of Ghana, he said, when my security intelligence told me A, I did Z, meaning I went to the very opposite of what they did. He said, if I had listened to them, I would never have let this man in the country, much less given him a platform upon which to speak. So there was propaganda, rumor, lies told to the high officials of government, not to the Ghanaian people, because it was up to the government of Ghana to let me in or keep me out. Once I got in, and the president heard my words, he sent agents to listen to me speak. The CIA and other disinformation spreaders had said that he's not really a Muslim. He's a communist masquerading as a Muslim. So my first speech here was organized by Muslims. And the Muslim ulama, the Muslim mu'alim came from different parts of Accra, and we filled the Nkrumah Center. And when I finished speaking, they knew that I was not only a Muslim, but someone who had something to offer to Ghanaian society. The elders came, they not only kissed my hand, they kissed my shoulder. Then I spoke in the colleges, universities, and everywhere I went, the Ghanaian people received me with joy. In fact, at the hotel, which was the Continental at that time, when the people would serve me food and I would want to give them a tip, they said, no tip. They wanted a tape of some of my lectures. Well, once the forces found out that I was being received by the people, then the poison began to spread by those who feared that I was coming to convert all of Christendom into Islam. And so there are outside forces that are so frightened of the popular appeal of a Louis Farrakhan that they have spread this propaganda and poison. If you listen to my tapes that I've made ever since I've been coming, take them and dissect them. You can't find anything in those tapes that is anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-Ghana, anti-Africa. Everything that is there is to promote the good and welfare of black people. Why should that be such a source of controversy? It is because the scripture says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And you know, and I know, and Africa knows that Africa is not yet free. You can't get freedom by somebody giving you political independence while their picture is on the dollar bill. You have to go to London to be recognized as a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer. You're not qualified to make these people yourself. And you have religion that enslaves you, that tells you that you can't name your children an African name and be baptized. This has to stop. And only truth can stop it. And your brother has come home to deliver truth. And those who have manipulated Ghana, sucked the blood of Ghana, raped Ghana, and robbed Ghana, do not want to see Ghana free to determine her own destiny. And that is the threat that I represent, and that's why I am received by some very negatively. But in truth, they have no reason not to come and embrace their brother with all the love that is in their heart. If they could embrace the British and embrace the colonialists and embrace the imperialists and embrace those who destroyed Ghana, why should not they run to embrace one who comes with a message that will deliver Ghana from what European and American oppression has put on Ghana? Think about what I'm saying.
Prophet Muhammad said, as I leave you, one learned person is harder on Shaitan than 1,000 ignorant worshipers. We have too many ignorant worshipers and too few learned men and women. I want you in unity to raise up the banner of Islam in this great nation and make everybody respect Islam. When they see the brothers with me and the sisters, you know what they say in America? Oh, there goes one of those Muslims. They can tell. You know why? We're the cleanest people. When they look in our faces, they see light. You see? When they listen to what comes out of our mouth, they hear wisdom. And when they see the work of our hands, they see progress. Listen, Mecca don't give me nothing. They don't give us any money.
It is true.
The Arab world don't give us any money.
It is true.
And I'm not begging. Allah is sufficient. Is Allah sufficient? Yes. Sufficient for the prophet? Yes. Sufficient for you? Yes. Oh, you know what we do? No. We produce the newspaper. We sell our newspaper. The newspaper brings us dollars. We invest the dollars. We buy farmland. We set up factories. We build schools with our own effort. Iron ore is here. The rubber is here. The water is here. The trees are here. The sun is here. You are rich, rich, rich. Get up, get up, get up, and let's take this land and make it. Allahu Akbar. Can't you see it's a conspiracy? Don't you think that somebody knows what they're doing? You can't say, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They have calculated what they're doing. Now watch this. Did you know, y'all all right, by the way? Okay. In 1974, Henry Kissinger, have you heard that name before? He was then the Secretary of State under President Nixon. He signed National Security Study Memorandum 200 titled, quote, Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests, end quote. It was adopted as official policy in America in 1975 by President Gerald Ford. And those who analyzed the report said Dr. Kissinger proposed that, quote, depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy towards the third world. Man, I'm going to say it again, boy, but now I really want you to listen. Depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy towards the third world. He quoted, Kissinger reasons of national security because, quote, the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. So wherever a lessening of population can increase the prospect for such stability, population polity becomes relevant to resources, supplies, and to the economic interests of the United States. Now, I'm not making this up. This is real. Now, to prove that it's actually real, you ready? Do you know the resources that is in the Caribbean? Do you know what you have? Not just Barbados, but the whole region. That's why you are not permitted to even foster the idea of a regional political unity. It came up earlier under the title Federation, and you know it died. The idea was not timely then, but the question is it timely now for the West Indies to become federated? Because if it does, all your children will never have to go abroad to find a job. Because if the West Indies is one great nation, then you can educate your children in all the sciences that would make us produce industry in the West Indies that would keep our products from going across the water, being our raw materials going across the water, being made into products, then coming back and sold to you at exorbitant prices. Look, we can change this reality. All right, look at this now. Do you want to know that this document was signed by Henry Kissinger? And look at where it's directed. It's directed to the Secretaries of Defense, Agriculture, Central Intelligence, the Deputy Secretary of State, and the Administrator of the Agency for International Development, with a copy to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now look at this. Agriculture is a part of it. The military is a part of it. And I'm going to show you just how this works. Now, the first thing they have to do is kill your will to provide food for yourself. That's first. I heard that Barbados used to grow food not only for ourselves, but for other nations in the Caribbean. Now, Barbados don't grow food for itself. You see? Haiti used to grow rice enough to feed all Haitians, selling the surplus abroad. Do you know what happened? America came in under Bill Clinton. Now, I can call names. I'm not a slanderer. This is actual fact.
But are you telling me that only Arabs were involved in the slave trade? There were not white European Christians involved in the slave trade?
In this region, East and Central Africa is mostly Arabs.
But, you know, you have to look at slavery as a whole, not just from Uganda. We were not brought to America by Arabs. We were brought by white Christians and white Jews.
to America. Arabs and even Africans were involved in selling us. Should I now say, because some African chiefs may have been involved in the slave trade, that I should have no unity with my African family simply because some African chiefs were immoral and corrupt? Should I deny the good of Christianity because some white Christians enslaved my fathers? Or should I deny the good of Islam because some Arabs may have been involved in the slave trade? We have to separate corrupt regimes, whether Muslim or Christian. Now, I was here during Idi Amin's regime. I walked the streets of Kampala during Idi Amin's regime. The streets were clean, the people were clean. The robbers and the thieves, many of them were beaten to death by the army. It was violent, it's true, but the streets were safe. He did confiscate the property of some of the Indians who were business people who were sending their money abroad and not keeping their money in Uganda. He did things that no doubt were improper. But when Idi Amin was deposed, I didn't see any dancing in the streets in Uganda. I drove with Idi Amin in his automobile in the streets of Kampala without any security guards. You mean to tell me a man that was that brutal, killed that many people, could drive in the streets of Kampala with no security guards? Something is wrong. Now, under Obote, was that a good regime?
No. Well,
What, Obote is not a Muslim? Obote is a Christian. So will we blame religion for man's failure to live up to religion? We can't do that. If we intend to be just and fair, Jesus Christ was a good man. All Christians aren't good. Muhammad was a good man. All Muslims aren't good. Abraham, Moses, and the prophets to the children of Israel were good people, but all Jews are not good. So we have to delineate between those who have violated the principles of good governance, the principles of justice and truth, from those who attempt to live up to the moral teachings of their religion. And I know Arabs have failed to do it, but I'm not in Islam because this is an Arab religion. You heard me say last night, Islam is not the religion of Arabs. Islam is the nature in which the human being is created. All it means is obedience to the will of God. That's what Islam is. And so if it's been given a bad name by some Arabs, as Christianity has been given a bad name, most of the people that colonized Africa, who were they? Christians. But you don't hate Christianity because of what these Christians have done.
Joe.
Blacula.